What is the status? Gone through? Good. I see a thumbs up from Chandan. Who else?
Also, because we had our mock test.
Sorry, come again.
We had our mock test, ma'am. So just going
Okay.
through is not enough.
Okay, so including BCR, is it or what?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Paper
Okay, so how did it go?
English went very well, ma'am.
Okay, that's good. Fine. So this is like a double revision now, the second time of revision now. Okay, so let us start. Now to begin with, your entire curriculum can be divided into 4 parts. Okay, the first part is your communication, of course, which is only your chapter 1, right? Which we know is a compulsory question for. There will be questions at least for 5 marks. The second part is with respect to sentence types and vocabulary, which is a chapter 2 and chapter 3. Okay, so even in the class today, we will be going as per these parts. So the second part is your sentence types and vocabulary. This will cover both of them put together at least 8 to 10 marks, 1 marks and 2 marks questions. The third part is your comprehension and note making, which is your 4th and 5th chapter. And for sure, there's going to be 5 marks question from this as well. 5 marks comprehension, 5 marks note making and summary. So that gives it, at least another 10 marks. And the 4th part is called as developing of writing skills, which is mainly all your articles, your presses, your report writing, meetings, resume, email, all those things. So the 4th part is the one which requires probably much of practicing from your end, right? Whereas compared to that, part 1, 2, and 3 also to some extent is easily scoreable. So was that the case in your mock test as well? How was the vocabulary section for the mock test? Yes, Bindu, unmute yourself. Yes, how was the vocabulary section?
Ma'am, I thought the vocabulary part was a little hard because the meaning words, that part.
Exactly. Even I was going through the first series of mock test paper and the words really seem like, even if you go to the root of words to come to some kind of conclusion, it would really not be possible. Right. So that was a thing even I felt when it comes to vocabulary. So, that is only a matter of practice. There are n number of words in English. So even I can't keep giving you the words and their meanings, right? Doesn't know as to from where the institute would pick up the words. Right. So when it comes to vocabulary, that is what even I felt with respect to the synonyms and antonyms. Otherwise, idioms can be pretty much easy. I mean, you can find some kind of influence from the idioms, but when it comes to the synonyms and antonyms, yes, only if you have heard of the word somewhere, only then it is possible you can connect. Otherwise, that becomes really difficult. Okay, so with that, now let us start off with the first chapter, communication. Right. So, what is the meaning of communication? Communication is the exchange of information, thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings, whatnot, using verbal or non-verbal parameters. So there always have to be 2 parties to communication, the sender and the receiver. The sender is usually called as encoder and the receiver is called as decoder. Now, also there has to be a common platform, that is a common subject for both of them to interact. And when is a communication said to be effective? Only when whatever the sender sends, a receiver is able to understand, interpret it in the same way, and respond appropriately to it. Only then the communication is said to be complete. Now, let me also share my screen. Right. So this is the meaning of communication, which we have seen. Moving forward, now what are the types of communication? Based on categories, we have 2 types. Based on medium, which is verbal, using words, which is basically your oral and written communication. And then we have non-verbal, which is without using words, which has again 5 categories, which is physical non-verbal, which is mainly using your body language. Para-language. What does para mean? Para mean other than language or along with language. So what does paralanguage include? It includes all your voice modulations, your pitch, your toning, how do you talk, right? So paralanguage relates to what all you use along with the language. And then you have appearance. Appearance is mainly concerned with your grooming as to how you present yourselves in front of others. And then you have aesthetic communication. What is aesthetic? It refers to something which is very beautiful, and how is it trying to convey? Examples would be, say, singing or music or dance forms, right? And the last one is symbols. Symbol is communication using different symbols. Best example would be your CA logo or your doctor's logo, right? Or the different symbols we have for temples, churches, mosques, and all. So based on medium of communication, the third categorization is visual communication. Visual is wherein we are trying to communicate using different drawings or visual pictures. Moving to the next part, based on style of communication. So based on style, you have 2 forms, that is formal and informal. Now, what is formal communication? Formal is communication within an organization. It can be again of 3 types: vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. So what is vertical communication? Vertical communication is the one wherein information is going upwards and downwards, as in the movement of information is only in the form of up and down. Horizontal communication is a communication among peers or people at the same level in the organization, and diagonal communication is cross-functional communication at different levels of the organization. Now, let me stop my share screen. If you have to compare your your vertical network with the communication network, which network would that be? But formal vertical communication with a communication network, which network can that be?
Chain network, ma'am.
Why chain network?
Because it goes from up to down, ma'am.
Okay, but how many people are involved in chain network?
There can be more than 3 people.
There can be multiple people.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other answers? Vertical communication is equal to vertical network in the networks, right? So that is the same. It is only, they're putting it under different baskets, but then both of them mean the same. Whether you're saying it is a vertical communication through formal communication, or you say a vertical network, both of them essentially mean the same, right? So if you have to say horizontal, what can that be under communication network? What is happening in horizontal communication? You're communicating with your peers. So which type of network do you have?
Same hierarchical level.
What? Come again?
Same hierarchical level.
Correct. So you have 5 types of communication networks, right? So under network, horizontal would probably compare with which type of a network? Circuit network, right? And if you have to talk about diagonal communication would correspond to which type of network?
Star network.
Star network.
Exactly. Right. So your understanding there has been pretty much good. Right. So after that, we talk about your essentials of communication. Now, what are the essentials of communication? What all do we have there? We have pronunciation, we have listening and conversation, we have spoken grammar, vocabulary, noticing language, and presentation. Now, essentials of communication, they might ask for just 1 mark or a 2 mark question, as in elaborate on pronunciation. It may not be a direct question, but then asking you in terms of indirectly. Then comes the network communication network. So we have 5 networks there. The vertical network wherein communication is, there is a hierarchy. Communication is between a superior and a subordinate. Circuit network, which is nothing but your horizontal network, wherein the communication is among the peers. Under Under circuit network, there is probably there's no hierarchy, but it is only communication among peers. Now, when it comes to chain network is there is one chain of command on top, and then he's passing on the information to people under him, right? So the difference between vertical and chain network is only with respect to the number of people involved. So when it comes to vertical network, it is usually only between two people. There is one superior and subordinate. There's communication happening only between the two. But then when it comes to chain network, there are multiple people involved. So that is the only difference between network, vertical and chain network. Possible, there can be questions asking you to identify the type of network. It can just be a 1 marker question. So if you can identify that, 1 mark is a cakewalk. And then you have fourth type, which is a star network. Star network is nothing but a diagonal communication wherein you're open and free to communicate with everyone throughout the organization. And there are also immediate feedbacks possible. So star network can prove to be a most effective form of communication within the organization because there are no barriers. There is no fear as to what would the other person think. Everybody is free to communicate with whomever they want. And the fifth one is called the wheel and spoke network. Now, wheel and spoke network is one wherein you have one person in the center and then he's trying to communicate to different people. Now, how do you distinguish between chain network and wheel and spoke network? Anyone? How would you distinguish between a chain network and a wheel and spoke network? When would you use a wheel and spoke network?
When only one person is coordinating with all the levels of the people.
Correct.
In small organizations.
So can you find out any point of distinction between these two, between the chain network and the wheel and spoke network?
Ma'am, chain network is the one which goes from higher to lower levels.
Hmm.
But wheel and spoke network is only one person who is a decision maker.
Correct. So there is no hierarchy as such under wheel and spoke. And another point is, if they have given, in terms of organization, wheel and spoke works well only when the organization is small. If it is a big organization or even a medium-sized organization, your wheel and spoke network cannot function well. So, in case I've given you reference to, a small organization wherein there is one person communicating with different people, that can as well fit into the wheel and spoke category. Right. Next is the characteristics of effective communication. So what are how many characteristics are there? There are totally 9 characters, right? There are 6 C's and 3 more. So there is an acronym for this. All of you can remember all those 9 pointers, or any difficulty in remembering? All of you can remember? What are the 6 C's? Yes, Riya Jain, unmute and answer.
Yes, ma'am. Clarity, conciseness, concreteness, courteousness, then what was that?
Coherence.
Concreteness, that was coherence, completeness.
Exactly. So you have clarity, conciseness. Now, what is clarity? Clarity is you should be clear in your communication. In short, do not use very long sentences. Whatever you have to communicate, just keep it to the point. Conciseness, yes. So under conciseness, if you have gone through the material, the first sentence under conciseness starts with brevity is the essence of business communication. So, these are the types of sentences which they can just pick up and ask you a question for 1 mark or 2 marks. They'll just give you a sentence, brevity is the essence of communication, elaborate. You should be in a position to connect that this relates to the conciseness aspect of the first chapter, right? So you will get that only if you have gone through the study material at least twice and you're able to connect this type of sentences with what are the pointers. Conciseness is keep it short. Concreteness is keep it based on the facts and numbers, facts and figures. Do not just give vague information. Coherence is related to the relational aspect of it, as in whatever you talk or whatever you communicate should be relating to each other. It should be sequentially organized. Completeness. What is completeness? You have to give the entire information. Now, entire does not mean your Google search. It means whatever is required to make the information complete. The next point is courteousness. Be polite, do not be rude. Though you have to communicate, though it can be a reminder letter, but then there is a subtle way of giving them a reminder, right? The next point is focus and attention. Focus and attention means, though there are a lot of distractions, you have to ensure that you concentrate on whatever is being communicated and be able to respond to that in the right way. Emotional awareness and control, very important. Always have a balance. There's one such statement and emotional awareness as well, which they can ask for a 2-mark question. So go through that. And then listening for understanding is, you always have to be, attentive when the other person is communicating to you so that you're able to articulate your thoughts well and reply to them. Right? So what is the next aspect after that? It is your barriers of communication. Right? So what are the barriers of communication? How many barriers are there?
10 barriers.
10 barriers. What are they?
Physical, cultural barrier,
Hmm?
language barrier,
Hmm? Yes, so it's there on the screen, right?
Technology.
All of you can see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So there is an acronym for this. If you want to remember, all of you have heard of polka dots?
Yes, ma'am.
Aware of polka dots? The small white dots which you see, they're called as polka dots. So you can use the acronym for this as polka, PET, PG. Now polka, P is physical barrier, which is all the barriers in the physical form. O is organizational structure barrier, which is the barrier with respect to the hierarchical levels, wherein you have to communicate you have to go through that hierarchy only for the communication. The third one, L, is called language barrier, wherein you have to, the different languages used can be a barrier. It is not only language, also the unfamiliar words or very high sounding words, the jargon words can also act as language barriers. C stands for cultural barrier. There are lots of examples for this. One is what you see here, right? Wherein this, if you hold it like this, it can have different meanings in different countries. A is attitude barrier, wherein you have a different kind of thinking in your mind that probably you know everything of a particular subject or a topic, or probably you do not know anything about the topic. Then this is polka, PET. P stands for perception barrier, wherein you again have a preconceived notion in your mind. You always tend to think based on whatever is there in your mind. E is for emotional barrier, or very important. This also connects to the previous point on emotional control and awareness. T is a technology barrier. Now, technology barrier is mostly with respect to how to use the technology if you're not aware, if you're not technology friendly. So that is when that acts as a barrier. PG, P is for physiological barrier. Now, when it comes to physiology, the term physiology refers to your human body. So whatever, impediments or difficulties you're going through physically, those can act as a barrier. Example, if the person is not feeling well, or the person is blind, he has a poor eyesight, or he can't hear properly. So all those things act as physiological barrier. And the last one is gender barrier. This is your G. Gender barrier is when there is hesitancy among men and women to talk to each other. Probably they are not very open in communication. So that is when it acts as a gender barrier. So all of you can connect to the acronym here. All of you can connect to the acronym.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So can you repeat it once? Okay, we'll do that. Pratiksha. There are a lot of Pratikshas. Who is this
Yes, ma'am.
Pratiksha? Yes. So can you please repeat that once again?
Yes, ma'am. Physical barrier, organizational structure barrier, language barrier, barrier, cultural barrier, attitude barrier, perception barrier, emotional barrier, technological barrier, physiological barrier, and gender barrier.
Gender barrier, right? So barriers can be a question for 2 marks, 2 mark or 1 mark, right? Wherein they can either ask you on one particular barrier or 2 barriers combined for 2 marks, right? So that brings us to the end of first chapter, and then we move to the second chapter, which is your vocabulary. Sorry, the third chapter, right? So what is vocabulary? Vocabulary is all your movie dialogues, right? And there are mainly 4 types of vocabularies. That is your listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So writing and speaking is termed as expressive vocabulary, because only when you're writing and speaking, that is when you're able to express. And listening and reading is referred to as receptive vocabulary. That is when you're able to receive or hear and get to know different kinds of words. Now, what is it that is important in vocabulary? You have so many sections. If you look at your study material, you have your connotations, jargon words, idioms, synonyms, antonyms, collocations, phrasal verbs. Along with that, your root of words, prefix, suffix, all these things are there. But then from examination point of view, what is usually asked is your idioms, synonyms, and antonyms, right? Jargon words and connotations, rarely asked. Collocations also rarely asked. Now, synonyms and antonyms, as I told you, this is something which probably you have to go through your previous year question papers to get some kind of idea. Another catch, or may not be catch, another helping point would be if you could go through your all your previous RTPs and MTPs. If there are chances that they just pick up few words from there and you're lucky enough, it would be a good score, right? Otherwise, synonyms and antonyms, of course, go through all the words in your study material. That also could be asked. You cannot rule that out. Same with idioms as well. Okay, so let us see one by one. What do they mean? Connotations. What are connotations? They are the feelings or emotions attached with the words. Now, when you take a word, whatever is the literal meaning or the dictionary meaning of that is called as denotation, and whatever is a feeling or emotion attached to it is called as connotation. Now, connotation can again be 2 types, positive and negative. So what is positive connotation? When you're trying to express a positive emotion with respect to a word, right? Example, say curious. Curious is a neutral word. So if there has to be a positive connotation for that, you say interested. If there has to be a negative connotation, you say nosy, right? Similarly, old. If you have old is a neutral word. If you want a positive connotation, you would say that is a vintage collection. So what do you mean by vintage? It means it is old, but then you're probably expressing it in a different way. Whereas if you have to say that in a negative way, you say it's a decrepit collection, which means this is very old, right? So this is the way you use either a positive or a negative feeling attached to a word to express your communication. Similarly, jargon words. Now, what are jargon words? These are technical words which are particular to a respective field or area of specialization. Now, you would not feel that as a jargon if you're in the respective field, but then say there are different medical terms used in front of you, you would obviously feel that is a jargon word because you're not aware of it, right? Now, to make your communication effective, use less of jargon words, or if you have to use them, then ensure that you give something like an appendix to ensure that people understand it. When it comes to examination, jargon words, how can they ask you questions on this? Probably in comprehension. Both for connotation and jargon words, they can pick up, some of the words from the comprehension and ask you probably to give you a positive or a negative connotation for it, right? Then comes idioms. What are idioms? They are the group of words which take figurative meaning than the literal meaning. As in, the literal meaning is different, but then what they actually mean in the context will be entirely different. Like a storm in a teacup, what does it mean? Creating a huge ruckus out of an issue, right? Similarly, synonyms. Synonyms are the words with same meanings. Antonyms are the ones with the opposite meanings. And then you have collocations. What are collocations? A group of words that habitually appear together, right? Like raining heavily, dogs bark, something like that. You don't say it is a strong rain, right? You usually say it is raining, it is a heavy rain, it is pouring, right? What else do we have here? Okay, some of the idioms. What does whole 9 yards would mean? whole 9 yards. Whole 9 yards would mean all of it, all that is possible. Right? So what does 9 yard depict? 9 yards means a very huge distance, right? Something which is enormous. So when you say whole 9 yards, I want whole 9 yards of it, means I want all of it, whatever is there. I don't want to leave anything to anyone. Beat black and blue. What can this be?
Beat them very much.
Yes, beat them very badly. Take French leave. What can this be?
An unannounced leave.
Exactly, uninformed leave. See, these are the ones which I've taken from your study materials, right? So go through your study materials. There are good collections of idioms there as well. Okay, so then we move to the comprehension part. Now, what is comprehension? Comprehension is the act of understanding. Why is comprehension there? So that once you clear your foundation and enter your articleship after your inter probably, you will have to go through various reports, right? Even if you're going in an audit, you have to go through the previous audit reports. So the intention is, from the long-term objective, you should be able to understand the report. It is not just reading quickly, but then also be able to understand and analyze what is there in it. What are the important points? That is why you have the foundation, you have the basics in your CA foundation, right? So in comprehension, they will usually give you a passage, which you'll have to go through and then attempt the questions. So what are the strategies to attempt a comprehension passage? Yes, can somebody read this out? Yes, Sachindra, read it out loudly. Sachindra?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Quick read to get the main idea. Underline the keywords, points, statements. Scan through all the questions. Have a clear understanding of the questions. If required, underline main points in the question. Reread the passage. Mark questions. Specific information. MCQs where very close options may be provided. Choose the most appropriate one.
Yes. So the key is just read it. Just read the comprehension roughly. There's also something called as reading between the lines, right? Wherein you don't have to go through each and every word, but then you just glance through what is there, right? So that you get a gist of what is the passage talking about. And then probably look through the questions. You know, one way of connecting one, 2 to 3 questions would be, you know, straight away picking up from the passage. So that is very much similar to how we used to have it in our high schools, right, from an English passage. So at least 2 marks would be a straight pick from the passage. Those are the words, those are the things wherein, you know, from the question you can directly connect the relating word from the passage and then pick the answers. And then you can have 4 types of questions which they will ask from the comprehension. Right? So one can be a specific detail question. Now, what does this mean? This means ask for specific details from the passage. This can be your 1 mark questions, wherein they're asking you for a particular information. The second one can be a vocabulary based question. Now, this is what I was referring to, wherein from the passage, they can just ask for meaning of words or phrases or idioms used in the passage, which mainly is concerned with understanding and applying the comprehension part of it. Then third type is you can have inference questions, wherein you will have to come to a conclusion based on whatever you have read in the passage, right? Inference questions are wherein you are open to give your opinions and suggestions. And then you can have the main idea questions. Now, what is the main idea? This is something like identify the theme of passage, right? So these are the 4 types of questions which can be asked in your comprehension. So how was the comprehension part in the mock test? How was the comprehension part?
Main question.
Same question. What was it, Rahul? Can you repeat?
Ma'am, it was easy, ma'am.
It was easy. Yes. Comprehensions is usually may not be, you know, that technical or something which you'll have to really scratch your head, because most of the answers you'll have there ready in the passage, right? Okay. So after that, let's move to the next one, which is note making. Okay. So what is note making? Note making is a practice of recording information from another source, which may be books, meetings, or discussions, right? Now, what are the two types of note making?
Formal and informal.
Two types of note making?
Linear and non-linear.
Linear and non-linear.
Exactly. So what is the difference? How does a linear note making go?
Line by line.
Line by line. What are the important things you'll have to consider for a linear note making? It is mainly the indentation, how you present, right? So your linear note making is your traditional note making, wherein you just make pointers. But then the point of distinction here is you will always have a heading, a subheading, and a subpoint. So you'll have to bring in clarity in all the three when you're putting it down in your answer papers. Your heading has to be with one indent. Your points, your subpoints have to be with one indent, and your sub-points has to be with one indent. This indentation has to be clearly followed so that, when you look at the notes, what you have made, there is some kind of clarity. Now, how is the question asked? Usually note making and summary is paired for 5 marks, right? Your note making will carry 3 marks and your summary will carry 2 marks. So one easy way of doing it is you read your entire passage and then make the notes, and then from the notes you make your summary, right? So that would kind of complete the circle there, right? And that will also give you some kind of clarity with respect to what is coming in the notes, whether you're covering all those things in the summary or not. So that is one approach you can follow when it comes to note making and summary. Some of the pointers or mechanics of linear note making, there is a specified format for it, which always follows a heading, a subheading, and indentation, and then use of abbreviations and acronyms. Now, there are 5 rules of abbreviations. How should you abbreviate the words? Does anyone know? Does anyone remember? 5 rules of abbreviation? Yes, who would tell me? Mehak, are you there? Mehak is not there. Bhumika, are you there? Bhumika, FA 146. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Bhumika, can you tell me what are the 5 rules of abbreviation? So there are 5 rules. First one is use beginning of words. So if you have a long word, just use probably 2 or 3 letters of it, something like info. For information, you can use it as info. The second rule is use the beginning of word and the ending of word, something like graduation or government, you just use GOVT, right? The third rule is omit vowels, right? If you have golden, GOLDEN, omit O and E, just spell it as GLDN, that is understood as golden. The fourth one is use first and last letter of the word, which is if you have mount, MOUNT, you can just say MT, or Mr. and Mrs., MR and MRS. And the fifth one is shorten suffix, right? What are suffix? Suffix are the words which are used after, probably few letters which are added after the word, right? So you can just cut them off. So if there is a word called processing, ING is a suffix there, right? You can just say PRCNG. You need not mention it as ING. So these are the 5 rules of abbreviation which you have to keep in mind. Of course, use abbreviations only when required. Only when would you use them? When you have the same words which are being repeated again and again in your passage, right? So that is when you'll use your abbreviations. And if you're using them, always you'll have to give them in the key. What is the key when it comes to note making?
The correct word and abbreviations.
Sorry?
You have to write the full word and then the abbreviations.
Yes. So that is your key, and key is the most important thing in understanding your notes as to what are the pointers you've used in your notes. Okay, and then you have note making versus note taking. So what is note taking? Anyone?
You just actively hear to what's being told and you just write the points which you can collect. But note making is when you finally read those rough notes and make proper notes to which you can go back to and refer.
Correct. So in short, your note making is a passive process wherein you just write down everything. There is no filtration happening there. all the information is being received and then you make notes, whereas note making is an active and a focused activity wherein you are consciously putting down only whatever is required. So that is the main difference between note making and note taking. Now, what should be first, note taking or note making?
Note taking.
Note taking should lead to note making, right? And then we have few strategies for effective note making. Okay, so can somebody read this out? Rahul Jain, can you read this out?
Strategies for effective note making. Read the text twice, identify the main idea and draw important points. Look at how the main ideas has been presented or developed and frame a suitable title or heading. Be brief and specific. Skip examples. Write short points in logical sequence which should be complete info. Indentation. Appropriate spacing between heading, subheading, and sub-sub points. No personal interpretations. Do not change the author's intended meaning. Abbreviate most often used words.
So these are the strategies for effective note making. Okay. So moving to the next point, which is your summaries and précis. And what is the difference between summary and précis? What is the main difference? Both of them are same.
Ma'am, summary.
Short form.
Yes. Yes, there was
Summary is 1/4 and précis is 1/3. And like summary has no strict rules that you have to stick to the word count, but in précis you must stick to the word count. That is very important. And in summary you may write it in any order you want, but in précis you have to follow the order that is given in the paragraph that we are supposed to write from.
Exactly.
And we cannot use any abbreviations in them.
Abbreviations. Right, abbreviations you cannot use in both of them. Another point is when it comes to summary, you're open to give your suggestions. You're free to make interpretations or comment on the original text. Whereas in a précis, you cannot do that. In a précis, you only have to state whatever is given in your main passage. You're not free to make your opinions and suggestions. And from your exam point of view, your summary is only for 2 marks, wherein your précis can be for 4 or 5 marks. Right. So also the only main thing is you strictly have to stick to the number of words there. Now, what are the rules or, what are the practical aspect to be kept in mind when you're writing summaries or précis? All of you remember what do you say? How do you count the number of lines? How do you count the number of words? So say there is a passage they have given you of 4 paragraphs and the total number of lines there is say around 12 lines. So how do you come to a conclusion as to how many lines or how many words you should be using?
We count the number of words written in the first line, and then we count the lines of the paragraphs, and then multiply with them, and we come to the conclusion of the words given.
Right. And how do you determine how many lines you should be writing?
1/3 of what we get.
The words what we write in the first line. Correct. And then how many lines are to be written accordingly.
Correct. So did you people implement this in your MCQ? Sorry, in your MTP?
Yes, ma'am.
Implemented? Did it work out?
Yes, ma'am, to some extent.
You were able to fit in, I'd asked, the approach was also to, mark the line. Probably if it comes to 6 or 7 lines, then you mark on your 6th or 7th line saying my précis should end here or my summary should end here. So are you able to stick to that?
It exceeded, ma'am.
Okay. Exceeded by how many lines?
2 lines, ma'am.
2 lines. Okay. 2 lines should probably be another 10 to 12 more words, right?
Yes.
If it was a summary, it's okay. But then if it's a précis, it may not be okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Right. So who else? Only Aarti implemented or others also implemented? Did anybody else implement that? Okay, I don't see any responses. Okay, so when it comes to note making and what is this? Probably summary or précis. What do you find comfortable? Do you directly write it down on the answer paper, or do you make a pointers kind of a thing, at the last page, and then you write the summary? Then you come to the main answer sheet. What approach are you people comfortable with? Did you get my question? No. Okay, let me repeat. So if you have your summary or your note making the passage, right? So when you have to answer it, do you directly start writing in the paper, or do you make, you know, a point-wise, just a rough thing somewhere at the end of your answer sheet, and then come to the main page and start writing? What approach are you comfortable with?
Rough note.
Rough note. Okay, how many that is actually a preferred way, especially with respect to note making, because you know there are chances you might miss some of the points, some of the notes in between, and when you're writing it down, if that happens, it becomes really difficult to fit something in between two lines, and it doesn't look good as well. So that is also a preferred approach, provided you have time, or you know, if you have practiced it enough so that you're able to frame everything mentally in your mind and then able to put it down, nothing like that. But then if you have sufficient time, then probably another approach you could consider is also just make down you know, small pointers, or just roughly whatever you can understand in the last page, and then come back to your main answer sheet and then try writing it down so that you do not miss on any of the points. Right. So next we move to article writing. So what is article writing? It is a piece of non-fiction text, right? What do you mean by non-fiction text? Which it means whatever you write in an article is all true. There are no you know, imaginary stories which you write in an article. So are there any rules attached to the article writing? So there are no strict rules or techniques to be followed. You are free to write it in your own way. Of course, there is a formal structure to be followed. Now, what is the structure here we mean? There has to be a heading or a title. Now, how should be the heading? It should be eye-catching. It should be interesting. You know, looking at the heading, your audience should feel like reading your entire article. The second one is byline. Under the format, you will have the byline, which is who has written the article. And then you'll have an introduction to the article, which will usually give, you know, some of the mind-boggling things or some of the startling facts and statistics. And then you'll have your body, which can be like 2 to 3 paragraphs, or probably 1 to 2 paragraphs, depending on how many word limits is specified. In the body, you're talking in length about the topic, the meaning of it, the pros and cons of it, if followed, if not followed, what would happen, and all these things. And then you'll have a conclusion. Conclusion is a formal and logical ending, wherein because it is an article, you're free to give your own opinions and suggestions. Or you can also give a call for action, you know, something like food for thought. So you're open to do, or you're open to experiment all these things in an article. Now, article writing, of course, comes under the fourth part, which requires practice. And most of the times, this is seen as a definite question in your question papers, at least for 5 marks. Right? So what are the steps in article writing? What are the steps in article writing? Can somebody read this out?
Step 1, identify the target audience. Step 2, identify the purpose of writing. Step 3, collect and select information. Step 4, organize information sequentially and logically. Step 5, write the article.
Yes. So target audience is most important. Of course, that happens when you are practically writing it, but then in your exams, you know who is your target audience, right? So alter your data accordingly. Now moving to the next chapter, which is your report writing. So what is your report? What is a report writing? What does report writing mean? What are you writing in a report?
Something that has already happened, like an event or something.
Correct. So it is essentially a postmortem report. You are reporting on something which has already happened, but then you have a specific audience to whom you're reporting. And it is after a thorough investigation, or after having complete information about the event, you are reporting it to your specified audience. So your information can be altered based on who is your audience and what is the need of the audience. Now, types of report. How many types of reports are there? How many types of? Yes, 3 types. What are they?
Newspaper reports, magazine reports, and
Formal reports, formal or official reports. Right? So when it comes to newspaper and magazine reports, the format is pretty much the same. Only exception is place and date. So in a newspaper report, you have your title or your headline, your main heading, your headline, and then comes the by name, the author's name, that is the report is written by, and then you have the place and the date, and then you have the body of the report. Whereas when it comes to a magazine, there is no place and date. You'll only have your heading, you'll have your author's name, and then you'll have your body of the report. Content pretty much can be same between a newspaper report and a magazine report, or probably one difference can be in your newspaper report, content could be a little bit concise, where in your magazine report it could be at length. The third one is a formal or an official report. So what is this? Is there any specific format for this, for an official report? So there's no specified format, because it could be any report. In an organization, it could be your MIS, it could be your audit report, it could be management report, or a project report. Even that is a formal report. So depending on what is the type of report, there are different formats to be followed. Now, points to remember. Okay, can somebody read this out? We have two distinctions there. There are a few general points and there are a few specific points. So who would read this out? Yes, who is
Can I
that?
read it out, ma'am?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Points to remember, specific points. Reports are objective. Suggestions and recommendations should be purely based on facts and data, no subjective views. Personal pronouns in first and second person, that is, I or we or you, are generally not used. Passive voice is preferred for newspapers and magazines, while active voice for official reports. Past tense is used as reporting on events or happenings which have already taken place. Technical jargon may be avoided if necessary to include, add a glossary. General points. Bear in mind the target audience. Language should be clear, concise, and to the point. Avoid long sentences, vague information, and irrelevant material. Arrange information logically and sequentially. No grammatical errors. Proofreading preferred for accuracy.
Yes. Now, all the general points which you see, and also the characteristics of effective communication, which we saw, right? The 6 C's and the 3 more points. These are to be followed across the creative writing or the developing writing skills aspect for your communication paper. Or just forget about paper. Even when you are there in the practical world, these are the things that generally have to be followed. You have to have clarity, you have to have conciseness, you have to be talking sense, that is all the relating matters, you have to be talking complete. So whatever characteristics of communication we saw, you can take them as a blanket thing which is applicable for across whatever you write in communication. So those come under the general points. Whereas when we are talking about specific points with respect to the reports, what you have to be aware of is the active voice and passive voice you use. What is the voice to be used? You always have to use the past tense, because you're reporting on event which has already happened. It is not something which is going to happen in future. Right? Personal pronouns have to be avoided, because you're always reporting it in third person. An event has already happened. You're reporting it to third person, to another person as to what has happened. Right? So these are the specific pointers you'll have to keep in mind. So the next one is formal letters and official communication. Now, what are formal letters? These are the letters used in an organization, which can be of 3 types: business or official letters. It could be letters highlighting civic problems, or it could be letters for job application. Now, in our curriculum, we are mainly looking at the first type, right, which is business and official letters, which is usually concerned with making inquiries, registering complaints, placing or canceling orders, and all these things. Right. So points to keep in mind using when you're writing a letter, it is mainly about formats, nothing else. right? So your content would be concise. You don't have to elaborate much on the content. They would have given the question. You just have to elaborate 2 or 3 sentences on that. And format is the most important thing. So if the time permits, ensure that you probably put a box around your letter so that it looks presentable, right? And leave additional line between paragraphs, as there are no indentations used when it comes to a letter, right? Unlike a note making wherein the indentation has to be clearly followed. So when it comes to letters, you present them in terms of paragraphs. So ensure that you leave at least one additional line between them, and then state the reason for writing in your first paragraph. So your first paragraph, your opening paragraph, should always give you a sense of why are you writing this letter, and then you elaborate it on the succeeding paragraphs. And then add details that will make receiver's task easy. So this is the reference, which we include in our letters, right? So usually you have the subject and you have the reference. Now, what is reference? References you're given to whatever is related to the subject, the additional information which will make the receiver's task easy. And then make reference to previous correspondence, if any. So in case if you have had any previous correspondence, make a reference to that as well. So let us look at format. What will the format look like? It will have a sender's address. It will have the date. It will have the designation or the name of addressee, and then address of the addressee. Salutation, which is your greeting part, your dear sir or madam, and then your subject, and then the content. Content will be split into the introduction, body, and conclusion. And then you'll have a complimentary close followed by your signature. Right? So if you look at the slides which I've shared with you, most of them only have the content, right? Wherein it directly starts with whatever is being asked. But then do not have that in mind whenever you're answering in the examination. This has to follow from the sender's address, followed by date, designation, and all these things. Right? So moving to the next part, types of letters. How many types of letters are there? How many types of letters are there? 7 types. Yes. So let us go through one by one. So first one is letters of inquiry. What are letters of inquiry?
Ma'am, asking the details of the product.
Yes.
Asking about something like a product.
Correct. So mainly you're making an inquiry when you have to, get to know information from your vendor or from a third party. Sorry. So what are the main things which have to come in your letter of inquiry? You have to state who are you. First give your introduction, then you give what is your requirement. That is what is it you're looking for. You have to clearly specify. And then give the timelines. That is, by when do you expect to receive whatever is your goods or service. So these are the 3 main things which have to be there in your letters of inquiry. Plus, you can add your contact details. The second one is order letter. Now, what is an order letter? So once your letter of inquiry is complete, then you go ahead with placing the order, right? So what all information has to be there in an order letter?
Ma'am, what are our requirements? Like measurement of anything which you need, and what's the quantity? And
specification.
Sorry?
Specification.
Specification, and then it has to have information about the delivery and payment. Right? So when you're placing an order, what are you concerned with? What is the quantity you require? By when do you require? And then of course the payment. Where do you require? Where do you require as the delivery part of it? So whenever they're asking you to write down either an order letter or a letter of inquiry, these are the 3. These are the main pointers which you have to keep in mind, irrespective of whether you include others or not. If these 3 things are there, then it means like you have covered whatever is a requirement. So these pointers you ensure you keep in mind. Then the third one is a letter of complaint. So what is a letter of complaint? It is mainly you are conveying to the company that you're not satisfied with the product. You're dissatisfied with the product. So what should a letter of complaint contain? It should contain the product details or the service details and what has gone wrong with the product. right? So of course, when you're talking orally, you can have a very broad explanation for that. When you're talking, saying this is not good, that is not good. But then when you're writing it down, you clearly have to concise it and bring down to whatever is the actual point. The fourth one is reply to a letter of complaint. So what are the important things which have to be there in a reply letter?
Ma'am, first we have to apologize them.
Hmm.
And then we have to make sure that if possible we'll detect the defect and will provide accurate measures to solve that.
Corrective actions.
And then at the last, saying them that you are our valuable customer, so give us a chance.
Yes, good. Anyone else? Okay. So a reply to letter of complaint should first always start with an apology, saying we apologize for whatever has gone wrong, and then you state your understanding of what is the issue, and then you say what are the corrective actions you're taking to address the issue, and then give them a reassurance saying we will take care that this will not happen in future. So these are the 4 things which have to come in your reply to a complaint letter. Then you have the promotion letter. So what is promotion letter? Is that the employee promotion letter?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so what promotion letter is this?
Promotional of products or services given
Right.
by the firm.
Right. So what does the promotion letter contain? This should have your, first of all, it should start with a greeting. It should always start with a, a happy note. And then give the details of whatever is a product you're trying to promote. And then mention the validity as to until when, until what date or period this offer would be valid. So for the product which you're promoting, and then give the contact details, which is the most important thing. And then on the similar lines, you have the sales letter. Now, what is sales letter? It is a one wherein you're trying to publicize and sell the product. So while this seems to be the main intention, the other intentions of sales letter is to strengthen your relationship with the customer and make customers feel that they're important. Now, another point of distinction is most of the times promotion letters is sent only to the new customers, wherein sales letter is sent to the existing customers, right? So that is also a point of distinction. And then you have your recovery letter. So what is your recovery letter? That is the one wherein you're trying to recover what is the amount due from your customers, right? Now, if at all asked to write down a recovery letter, you really have to be very careful on the type of words you use, right? Because the words you use shouldn't be annoying, or it shouldn't be offending to the other person. It shouldn't be offending to your customer. So you have to be talking about the amount due, the due date of payment, and legal action in case of non-adherence. So legal action, whatever you want to specify. So usually recovery letter goes in 3 courses. You have reminder 1, reminder 2, and reminder 3. Reminder 1 is a very gentle reminder wherein you are generally stating this is due. Please let us know when you'll make the payment. The second reminder is wherein you're giving a little push, a stronger version of it. And the third one is where you're talking about the legal action which you would be taking. Right. Now, when it comes to types of letters, if you've gone through the previous papers, not much of it have been asked. But then, of course, there is no bar. Any type of letter could be asked in coming exams. Right. Then moving to the official communication. So what do you have under official communication? We have memos and circulars. So what is the difference between a circular and anyone?
Memo is for small memo.
Memo is for a
small group.
Okay.
Circular for the entire
organization. Yes. So in short, memo can be related to a specific department in an organization, whereas circular is something which would relate to the entire organization. Now, circular, the word itself means circle, or it means making rounds, right? And this is intended for larger audience. The primary focus is on operational issues, and circulars are used to convey a special message or an instruction which is to be followed in the future. Compared to a memorandum, which is mainly about reminder of policies and procedures which are followed at an organization level. And memorandums are used to remind, highlight, recount, record, inform, or instruct about a particular topic or an issue. Now, this circular and memorandum is also mostly about your formats, right? So this is the format of a circular wherein you'll have a date, you'll have the circular number, most important, and then you'll have title, and then to all employees, whatever is the matter, followed by your signature and name and designation as to whoever is sending the circular. Compared to, if you look at the format of a memo, so this usually starts with inter-office memo. You'll have a date, to and from, and reference. Now, why is it to and from there? Because this is going to a specific department, unlike a circular which goes to the entire organization. And then you have the subject and then signed and designation. Right? So memos and circulars are mainly with the formats. Nothing much apart from that. Right? After that, we have our email writing and resume writing. Right? So who would give me in short, what is an email writing and what are the things to be included? I hope all of you are aware of email writing, right? Yes, Varun, FA135. Can you give me your understanding of what should be there in an email writing? What happened? Varun, you can hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Yes. So what is an email writing? What are the types of email writing and what is the format?
The format is from, to, and CC, if required BCC.
Yes.
Subject, salutation, main body, and
then you have your closing.
Main body includes
attachments, and then you'll have your signatures. Right. So email is again electronic mode of communication. You have three types, right? Formal, informal, and semi-formal. Right? Formal is one which is exchanged in the organization. Informal is among your friends and relatives, and semi-formal is also something on similar lines. Now, email writing, of course, you don't have to, if they've asked you to write, on a product or on a product promotion or something, you don't have to write the entire thing on the face of the email itself. The specifics, whatever, you wish to give, you could probably say it is there in the attachment. Now, don't go to the extent of having a separate attachment. You can just say enclosure and attachment. So, but the point was, in case you are confused as to what all information do I give about this product or about a service which they have asked, if you remember the example we had discussed about coffee, email writing for, selling a different variety of a coffee. So, in case you have to start thinking as to what are the different coffee varieties I give, what is the price specification I give, just put one sentence saying, we have different specifications and different prices for that, which is given in the attached brochure. Right? So that is how, you are giving elaborate information, but then also giving it in a concise form. Okay. So after email, we then have the resume writing. Right? So what is the resume? It is an an exhibit of your skills and your education records. What are the formats or what are the three types of resume which you can follow? What are the three types of resume you can follow? Three formats. You have the
chronological, functional, and combination.
Correct. So what is a chronological resume writing format? What is the distinction?
I think when you write your achievements or like whatever you have studied, like your courses, in a chronological order.
Okay, and then in skill-based? So in your skill-based, you are probably highlighting your skills first and then probably giving lesser importance to your educational achievements and qualifications. So when do you use a skill-based resume and when do you use a chronological resume? You use a skill-based resume if there has been a gap in your career. right? So, for whatever reason, there has been a discontinuation in your previous work, and, when you're going to join your work, that is when you use a skill-based resume. The reason being, you will have to focus more on whatever has been your experience or whatever has been your skills, compared to a chronological. A chronological would be used when you're a fresher, right? Because when you're starting afresh, it is your education and qualification what you have, and you will not be having your experience, right? And then you also, of course, have the combination resume, which you could use, depending on irrespective of whether you are a fresher or an experienced person. Now, in resume writing chapter, you have a question, you have a paragraph on SWOT analysis. If you people would have gone through that. So, of course, we also discussed this in the class, right? So, what is SWOT analysis? What does SWOT stand for?
Strength, weakness, opportunities, threat.
Correct. And this SWOT can again be further categorized as internal and external, right? So your strengths and weaknesses internal, wherein opportunities and threats are external factors. Meaning the external factors are not in your control, whereas internal factors are in your control. Now, why am I talking about this? You can have a question on this for 2 marks, SWOT analysis, or 1 mark, right? So when you have a question on 1 or 2 mark, probably 1 mark, you just have to give straight away whatever is the thing you're asking. Whereas if it is for a 2 mark question, then you can probably give, along with the meaning, 1 or 2 sentences extra on your understanding. Another point, on your communication network, the first chapter, if there's a question for 2 marks on the different types of network, probably you could also give the diagram there, right? Not very technical or very difficult to draw the diagrams. So just ensure, keep that point in mind. So that if you give the diagrams about the vertical or circuit or star or whatever is the network, then probably that would have additional weightage to it. Right. So coming back to resume, you're talking about SWOT analysis, right? Yes. So have an understanding of what is there in that paragraph of SWOT analysis in your study material. So what are the things in a resume? You'll have a cover letter and then you'll have your resume. So what is a cover letter? It is the first point of communication with the third party or the company, right? Which usually has an introduction, it has a body and a conclusion. Now, how do you distinguish between a cover letter and a resume? Cover letter gives in brief, they're just the pointers. So if I have to say that in a different way, your cover letter has to be something which attracts your person on the other end to pick this candidate for the next step of interview. So that has to have the main highlights or, the very catchy things which you have done and you're highlighting in your resume. Whereas when you come to resume, it is a detailed description of your educational qualification and your experiences. So parts of resume, you have to have your personal information, which is your name, date of birth, and contact details. You have to have your career objective, just state in 1 line in a very short sentence as to what is it that you're looking for in the company and what you try to achieve, what is it that you expect from the company. And then give your educational qualification, your work experience, your articleship details, and then your if you have had any certification, any awards and achievements, details of that. And if you have any other interests, your personal interests, mention about that as well. And then your reference. Now, what is reference? What is reference? Anyone? What is reference which you give in your resume?
To verify whether the given information is correct or not.
Correct. Correct. So in your examination, you can just mention reference as 1 or 2 people's name if asked for, right? Okay. So after resume, we then go to the meetings chapter. So meetings, from examination point of view, meetings only has like 3 things, which is agenda, your minutes, and your action taken report. And not much asked for until now. Did you have a question on this in your mock test on the meetings, right? Okay. So yes, until now in none of the papers it has been asked for, but then point to consider is it has been asked in the mock test paper. So as well be aware of it. So what is a meeting? Meeting is a formal or informal deliberative assembly of individuals wherein there are different people who agree to meet at a particular place to discuss on a specific topic. So that is a meeting. which is always held at a defined place and time with a definite agenda. Right? So what are the two types of corporate meetings? You can have an organizational meeting or you can have an operational meeting. Now, organizational meeting is one which is usually between the management and the shareholders, whereas operational meeting is related to the day-to-day operations, or which is between the management and the employees. And meeting includes your agenda, your minutes, and your action taken report. So what is agenda? What is agenda? Or if you can see my screen.
Your motive.
Yes. Okay. So what is agenda? Agenda is what all you plan to discuss in the meeting. Right? So when they talk about agenda, it is again about the format, and most of the times they would have usually specified as to who will be present in the meeting and what are the things they're going to discuss. So if it is given in that way, you just have to put it in a table format and tabulate it. That's all. So how does the format go? You have your meeting information, you have date, time, and location, and then you can either have it in a table format or just have it as pointers, depending on how many details you have to discuss in the agenda. And then convene by end date. Now, this is the most important thing here, as in you'll have to convey who is holding the meeting or who is initiating the meeting. Right. So after agenda, what is the next thing? It is your minutes. So what is minutes? Minutes is a summary of all that has been discussed in the meeting. Right. So in the minutes, you say, these are the points we discussed, these are the actions to be taken, and who is responsible for taking what action, right? And the format goes like this. You have the date of meeting, you have your time, location, and then the pointers, and then recorded by as to who has prepared the minutes. You can also capture in the minutes attendance of the meeting, who were present, who were not present, if not present, for what reason, right? So after minutes, we have the action taken report. Now, what is an ATR? This report gives us, based on the minutes, whoever was held responsible for a particular action, whether they have completed that or not. So this is a pretty simple format wherein you just say date, and as for the meeting held on so and so date, following actions have been reported, whatever are your pointers, and then signed by so and so. Right? So these three things are, if it is given, it would be much on most of the details I would have specified in the question itself, or in case they have not specified, then of course it is open for your interpretation. You can have any number of people in your meetings and any number of pointers in your agenda to discuss. Right. So with that, we come to the end of all the chapters revision. Do you have any questions on whatever we have discussed so far? Okay. So since you've already attempted the MTP, I think this session has been just an extra thing after that. So I have few questions on vocabulary here. So let's try solving them. All of you can see my screen?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. You can see it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now choose a word which best expresses the meaning of the given word, which means synonyms. Repulsive. The four options are attractive, normal, disgusting, and confused. What can this repulsive mean?
Option C, disgusting.
Yes,
Disgusting. So what does repulsive mean? What is the meaning of repulsive?
Something from which we refrain.
Correct. Correct. So repulsive will mean disgusting. Nostalgic. What can this mean?
Homesick.
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 Correct. So nostalgic is usually referred to a positive, generally referred to a positive meaning, a positive emotion. But then when it happens on a daily basis, that can turn out to be homesick. Economize. Reduce,
Save,
save,
reduce,
minimize,
reduce.
accurate.
Save.
Save. Not minimize, not reduce. Economize can mean minimize. Economize can mean minimize.
No, ma'am.
No. So these options seem to be really close except for accumulate, but on a careful thought, if you give it a careful thought, then save is the answer to this. Applaud. This is a simple one.
Praise.
Praise. Right. Acumen. Abundance, bitterness, deficit, quickness of insight. What can it mean?
D.
Option?
D.
D. How many of you say option C? Anyone going with option C? What is the answer to it? It is option D, quickness of insight. Some more words. Nascent. What can it mean? Initial, unpleasant, latest, crude.
Initial.
Initial. Interim.
Temporary.
Not interval.
Interval.
Is it interval?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
How many say timely?
Ma'am, temporary.
Temporary. Okay, how many of you say temporary? How many words with temporary? How many words with temporary? Give me a thumbs up. Only one, no? Okay, I see one more here. Yeah, so the right answer is temporary, because whenever you say, what is that, interim is something which is before final, right? When we refer to your interim reports or your interim audits, that means something which has not happened, but then we are doing this on a temporary basis. Now, this will not mean interval, because interval means gap between two events or two happenings, right? So when we say interim, we are not referring to gap, but then we're referring to something which is not a final thing. It is done just for time, just for this time, on a temporary basis. Okay. Perspicacious. What can this mean?
Shrived.
Rude. Incensed. What can incensed mean? Incensed mean incited. Incensed means incited. Unabashed. Unabashed.
Not angry.
Not angry. Correct. Cryptic. What can cryptic mean?
Mysterious.
Mysterious. Correct. Now, antonyms. Pick the antonyms. What can brazen, the antonym for brazen be? What does brazen mean?
Bold.
Bold. So what can be the antonym?
Shy.
Shy. Right. Candid. What does candid mean?
Being frank.
Casual. Candid means casual. So what can be antonym for this?
Frank.
Frank. Frank or deceptive? Deceptive. Because frank would give the same meaning as candid. You've heard of candid pictures, wherein they just click pictures the way you're doing. You don't pose for it, right? So which means you're being frank there. Whereas deceptive is you're trying to hide something. Predicament. What does predicament mean? Predicament means difficult.
Something hard.
Exactly. So the antonym for that would be
Ease.
Ease. Right. Adumbrate. Elaborate, summarize, angry, happy.
Elaborate.
Yes. So adumbrate means summarize, and the antonym for that would be elaborate. Okay. So with that, we come to the end of the revision session. Okay. So any doubts so far? All good to go? Clinic all clear?
Ma'am, antonym for support.
Antonym for?
Support.
Support. Okay. Support is you are trying to help. Something which would mean you are not in favor of them. Anyone?
Against.
Against. Yes. Against can be an antonym. Yes. So I hope all good. No other questions?
For letter writing signature,
Yes.
should we write a name or should we put a signature?
So usually when you're writing a letter, you first put your signature and then below that within brackets you give your name. That is what you can follow in the examination as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions?
Ma'am, in the resume writing, in the enclosure column, they have given like testimonials. What does it mean?
Testimonials is whoever is trying to give more information about you.
So like reference?
Yes.
Oh, understood.
Yes. What else? Any other questions? So how many of you, all of you are writing in the December, the next month December attempt? All of you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's pretty good. So wishing you all the best for your exams. Do really well, but before you do really well, prepare well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you,
Right?
ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Wishing you all the good luck and hope to see you in the CA Foundation pass out meet. All with happy faces.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, ma'am.
Yes,
Right?
thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care and prepare well. Take care of your health. Take care of your health. Priority.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.